Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to another episode in the beginner series. I think this video we're going to go over the weaponry. So the different kinds of weapons that you can use and their best uses in the game. So AR-17 is not a great gun. Very few people will run it. It's basically a weaker M4. Unless you can get the half body pen mod, which there are none on the house. But if you can get something like this, like an S damage body pen one, this increases all the damage to the upper part of the target. Then it's about equal to an M4. It's still not as good as like a good M4. If you have an M4 that has stats like that, like an 8% pen with like S damage or something, it's still better. So the AR-17 is just a weaker M4, basically. The M4 and the AK are pretty much like your standard rifles in this game, and they're about equal to each other. Although the M4 is slightly stronger, not in damage, but its recoil is less. It hits still pretty hard. It reaches out really fast, and it's all around. Its fire rate is better. The AK hits a little harder, but it has way more recoil and it's harder to use. But it can be just as good if you mod them out right. But I think meta for this game is probably the M4. AR-17 is just a weaker version of that. So in this game also, there's like your normal guns, and then there's also like guns with identified extra stats now. So you have to click this tab right here to look at the identified guns, and then you can scroll through them, and they'll have different perks or different stats on the weaponry, as you can see. And the way you get these ID'd guns with stats is you find unID'd guns in raid. They usually drop off of Jackal. You can sometimes find them off of boxes. Stuff like that, and then you bring them back and you ID them, and you ID them with lenses. So the lenses are right here. This is what they look like. And the way you get these lenses is you go into your workshop and you use this lens thing. I have it favorited, but it's right here in destroy the lenses on the very bottom. And what you do is you select like a weapon, a gray weapon that it'll let you select, and you select it and it'll give you lenses for destroying that weapon. And this is how many lenses it'll give you right here, and this is how long it'll take. So that's how you get the lenses. You can ID weapons. There's some pretty baller weapons you could get from ID'd weapons. But to be honest, like with the right mods and the right ammo, the extra mods and stuff are just kind of like an extra oomph. And with the gear that most people run these days, which is like T3, T4, or even T5, like, doesn't make a huge difference. I would say the modded weapons, like, if you get the cheaper ones that just have like recoil reduction and stuff on there, that's pretty cool. But like, if you get the ones with like the super mods on them, they're really unnecessary in normal games, and they're going to cost you a small fortune for a lot of them. A lot of the good ones anyways. And they're not really worth it, to be honest. Like, they don't make that big a difference. They do help, but they don't make a huge difference. If you have the extra money to play with it and you want that extra little perk, go for it. But if you're beginning and you're new and you don't have a lot of money, I mean, sometimes you can find unID'd guns that are cheaper than regular guns, and they'll have stats on them, extra stats. So always check for that first. But if not, don't feel bad about using regular weapons, because there's not a huge difference. So that covers the ID'd weapons. That's the main guns in this game, like for like primaries. People run these. The shaft is like the starting gun. This gun is underpowered. It is awful. And if you're from like Tarkov and you're like, oh, it's an Asval, it's sweet. No, it's not sweet. It's actually probably the most trash gun in the game. And I'm including the pistols in that because We'll get to pistols. You'll see. Like, there's really only like 2 out of the 3 pistols are usable, and I still rate the shaft lower than the 1911, which is also pretty useless. I call them challenge weaponry. Challenge accepted. But this gun is garbage, and it's mostly because it doesn't have a muzzle slot, and muzzle slots are where you get most of your damage. So different weapons have different slot capabilities for attachments, and you'll see it'll be locked like right there. That's the suppressor slot. So in order to have a suppressor, you need to attach kits to them to unlock those slots. And there's a bunch of different kinds of kits that we'll get into. I'll go over in the attachments thing. But they unlock different things. So each weapon, well, some weapons have, actually I think just about all of them have some sort of kit that they require to unlock all the slots. I think almost every weapon does. So that's what those are for. So the shaft, it's pretty much useless. Don't use it unless you're going challenge mode or you have nothing else, I guess. The Scourge, this is one of the best sniper rifles in the game. I said one of the best because there's some competitors now. This gun is really OP as a sniper rifle. It does massive damage. You can get it to basically 2-tap people using gold ammo and specific mods, and I'll go over that further in the series when we start building guns. But you have to unlock a couple of slots on it as well. Otherwise, you can't attach an optic or a grip. And irons in this game kind of suck. Like, they're no bueno. In some games you can use irons pretty effectively. This game, I'd say irons mostly suck. Like, you need optics. And also optics have your other high damage stats. So these first 3 mods right here have all your damage stats. So if a weapon doesn't have a mag or a muzzle or an optic slot on it, like, odds are it's going to be kind of underpowered. So it needs these at the very least. And if it's missing one of these, that means that weapon is probably not going to be awesome, which is why the shaft sucks, because there's no muzzle slot. Even though it has a suppressed barrel on it and the weapon does fire suppressed, you just can't attach a muzzle slot, which means you miss out on damage. So unless you can get one that's identifiable that has extra damage, you can kind of compensate for that. Otherwise, it's a pretty trash weapon. So Scourge is basically a sniper rifle. It's pretty good. DMR also is a sniper rifle, but some people use it as a primary and just run around with it with like a ×4 or a ×2 on it. And it does work, but it is probably the most trash rifle in the game. It's underpowered. Unless you get a good one, like with stats on it, extra damage stats and stuff, it is underpowered and underwhelming. It takes so many hits on a guy. You're like, God, he's not dead yet. He's taken 6 shots. Yeah, it's because it's a DMR. If it was a Scourge, he'd be dead in 2 or 3. So the DMR is kind of the worst, but it does have the most ammo, the highest ammo capacity. But who gives a crap if you hold 40 rounds if it takes 6 shots to kill somebody? I'd rather have a 20-round Scourge and 2-tap people. Like, because by the time you get up to 6 shots on somebody, like if they're still out there getting shot at, like in the middle of nowhere, that's kind of on them. That's their bad that they didn't have cover nearby or whatever. So it's hard to kill people with a DMR. Most of the time, the person you're shooting at, by the time you tap him 2 or 3 times, he'll pull out a Scourge and just 2-tap you back. And you're like, what the? And then he'll go take your DMR and disassemble it because it's a piece of shit. The AR Lightning, also a piece of shit gun. Nobody runs these. 0 people run these because of the price, mostly. Also, it's a trash gun. Like, M4s are way better and they're way cheaper. So I don't like the AR Lightning. Some people like it. I think it's a trash gun. It has no stock slot. So, and I hate guns with no stock slots because you can't put light stock on them and you move slow as piss. But it supposedly does. It does like a lot of damage, and it's supposed to be this really cool gun, but it never ended up being really cool, and the price never came down on it to a reasonable level so that people would run it. And because of all the cheating on this game, people don't really run super expensive kits all that often because they're afraid just some cheater's going to kill them and take it, and then the cheater will be happy, and they're like, well, piss on me. Same thing with the MK. MK is actually a pretty good gun, though. Like, with the right mods and the right builds, this can be a pretty amazing sniper rifle or a primary. And I think most people probably use it as a sniper rifle just because of the price. You can safe it and pull it back out, so there's a good chance you won't lose it. If used as a primary, it's got the same problem as the Lightning with the expensive cost. So that's your basic rifles. Then you have SMGs. SMGs are pretty cool. They have high fire rates, and they'll really melt people like in close range. But I would say probably not any faster than like an M4 or an AK. Especially an M4. The AK is arguable because some of these guns have like a really high fire rate. So like the SMG is good kind of close to mid-range. It's a trash, like any 9mm weapon, all these weapons here are going to be trash for long range because the bullet drop off on 9mm is like really high. So if you're going to be shooting further, you might want to run vibration dampening, and we'll get into stuff like that when we get to the attachments. But the SMG is an all-around decent weapon. It is expensive to build, though, like more expensive than some of these other ones, and it's not all that much better. It is better, though. It's a really good gun, especially if you get some extra mods on it. Like, you can make this thing pretty awesome, and there's some really cool skins for it. It's pretty sweet. The Deluge. This gun is a close-range champion. Like, even with compared to a shotgun, like, I don't want to engage Deluge people off the rip, because this thing will melt you in close range with the right mods. I mean, and the right mods aren't even really that expensive. This is a really good gun if you just want to get up close and personal and just mow people. It takes not a lot of skill to do it. You just run up and you can pretty much hip fire and just go brrr, and they're dead. But I'll show you how to build those later. They're pretty sweet little SMGs. Very deadly. The Hesta, this gun is kind of underrated. Like, I would rather use this than a lot of other guns. A, because it's cheap. 2, because it's good and it doesn't require too many mods, which means you're paying less money because you only got to buy 2 mods for it. You got to buy a kit attachment to get a muzzle slot, and then your only optics and muzzle. It has no mag, so it is a little bit underpowered. But they're really easy to find, like in an A or an S pen on the thing, and they're not that expensive. You can get extra headshot damage and stuff for not that cheap, for not that expensive. At least you could. I have a truckload of these in an S pen. An S pen along with a sight and a decent muzzle. This thing shreds, and it's low key cheap. Most people don't use it, but it's a good gun for budget close range runs. The Deluge and the MP5 require more attachments, so it's going to be more expensive. So I think the Hesta's a very budget-friendly option. Now the UMP, this gun just came out more recently, and the UMP, it has no stock slot, which sucks. And I don't know why, because it clearly has a stock. But you can't put a stock slot on it, which means you can't put light on it, which means you're slow with it. It has a low fire rate, but it kind of feels good. Like, it sounds good and it feels good and it kind of looks cool. So it's likable. The damage is okay. It does hit harder than an MP5, but you really need higher tier ammo to make it good. Like, an SMG with blue ammo is probably just fine. You can shred most people with it. Because of the UMP's slow fire rate, you really need higher armor pen to make those shots really hit hard. So I'd say purple ammo probably required to make this thing good enough to engage like T5s, whereas most other guns you can use blue ammo and you're probably okay. So this gun's cool though. I do like it. It's nowhere near as bad as a shaft because it does have all 3 stats. You can make these halfway decent. Machine guns, now I don't use a lot of machine guns, but some people like machine guns. The machine guns, I think, are a glorious waste of ammo. But they are strong. They are really strong. They hold a truckload of ammo. So here's the problem with weapons that hold a lot of ammo: is ammo is expensive in this game. It's one of your highest costs for building a kit, is getting high tier ammo and running it. So whenever, like, the 249 can hold 75 rounds, and if you put 75 rounds of purple ammo in that sucker, odds are in one engagement you're probably only going to get through like 10. So if they kill you, they're going to get like the other 60 rounds you had in there. So what I would recommend doing with like the MG249, unless you're in threes, if you're solo, maybe only put like half a mag in it. Split your ammo and do half a mag, and then just reload with half mags, because you're going to lose a lot of money on ammo if somebody kills you with it. They will destroy barricades and stuff, though. The problem with them, like, is they don't really hit. Like, you see, this does 35. The UMP does 33, and like, it has all the damage slots you can add to it. So this is kind of an underpowered gun. I don't feel like they're awesome. I don't run them very often, but they are somewhat fun. The problem, you can't put a muzzle slot on it, so you can't suppress it, which means you're going loud every time. Every time you fire this thing, like, everybody in the whole map can hear it. PKM, I think, is way better. PKM, actually, you get a mag slot on it, so this thing is pretty sweet. I mean, the 249, if you can get some of the really rare things like Warhead, good luck. I mean, they're super expensive. Or you could get blast damage or deep damage, but you can almost never find them. Fire rate increase, I guess, is probably about the best you can hope for to find, because these other ones are cool too to have, because it has no muzzle slot. So this is like muzzle, mag, muzzle, and muzzle extra stats. So basically all they're doing is compensating for the lack of attachments that you can put onto it. But I feel like the gun is a little underpowered for what it is, but it does fire a lot of rounds really quick, and it can destroy doors and stuff. So, but the PKM is a better machine gun. I feel like because you get the mag slot, because you get the stock and the grip, it's more controllable, and it can do more damage. I mean, it's already at a 40 damage to start, as opposed to the 35 with this. So PKM is just a superior machine gun for reals. Then you have your sniper rifles. And not all sniper rifles are created equal. The car, I'm going to say this is a challenge gun, because really the only thing this gun is good for is headshots. Because for relatively cheap, this gun will one-tap T5 heads. But it's basically a two-tap everywhere else. And on like a T5 or whatever, if you don't have good mods on it, it's probably more like a 3-tap. So this gun, I'm going to say, is a challenge gun. It is cheap. It's fun to run. I run them sometimes just when I'm boinking around. But like trying to car somebody whenever they're using like a persuader or a stomp or a pole or a scourge is really hard, because they can fire so much faster than you. But you only have to hit them twice. But it's not as easy as it sounds. Because like a scourge can two-tap you as well, but the scourge fires really fast and the car fires really slow. So this is, I'm going to call this a challenge gun. It's basically a do not use unless you're having fun, or you're really, really broke. But I mean, it's not that much cheaper than something that's decent. So if you're that broke, I don't know what to tell you. The Persuader is kind of like a lesser Scourge. I do kind of like it. I prefer it to the Scourge, actually, because the recoil feels better, and with a little bit more modding, costs a little bit more money, but you can get it to do almost the same thing. So Persuader is another rapid-fire semi-auto sniper rifle. It's not as good as a Scourge, which is funny because the Scourge is technically just a rifle and not a sniper rifle. You would think the Swader would be better at doing that task, but it's not. Then you have the Stomp. The Stomp, this is the budget gun that most people use. It's your 50 cal. It two-taps just like the car, or one-taps a lot of heads, and it's relatively cheap and requires only basically a scope and ammo. The ammo is really expensive for the better tier ammos, and you pretty much need to run purple if you're looking to one tap. You don't need gold, but purple is recommended. A lot of people will run blue, but I don't know if you can one tap like T4 heads with blue. I know you can with purple. So uh, this gun does fire faster than the car, but not as fast as a Swader. But you'll see a lot of little nakedlings running around with one of these. They'll take the scope off and safe it, and they'll just keep this because they're relatively cheap and inexpensive, and the scope's more expensive than the gun, so they just swap in and out of the scope a lot of the time. And then you have the pole, which is probably one of the best sniper rifles in the game. Like, I like it better than all the other ones. A, because it has all the slots, which means you can make this a one-tapper. This sucker will one-tap T5s, and if you probably have the right mods, like the super expensive ones, you could probably one-tap T5 heavy as well. But I'm not sure. It has not been tested, to my knowledge. But I see some people's polls, if they have like bullet, heated, and penetrating, I would imagine you get pretty darn close to one tapping T5 heavies with it. This gun, when built right, is probably the best sniper rifle in the game. And it is my favorite sniper rifle. And I'll show you guys how to build them so that they're awesome. There's a good budget-friendly version that can one-tap T4 chests and arms, which is super nice. So that's it for sniper rifles. Then you have shotguns. And shotguns are also one of my favorite weapons. And you'll notice that I run them a lot, especially this little pumpy, because the pumpy does 110 damage, and it needs relatively little modding and just purple ammo, and you can two-tap T5s. So this thing is a beast. And a lot of people don't like it or don't use it. Its downside is missing. If you miss, you're pretty much toast. And if you have to lure them in close, because this gun does not reach out very far. Shotguns are super close range in this game. This gun is awesome as well, but it fires really fast. It does less damage, so it does like 10 less damage than the A12, so a lot of times it won't 2-tap. It will 3-tap. The heavier geared players. But if you put a lot of mods on it, I bet you could 1-tap them. Once again, haven't tested it really, but like, if you get a good spread. Shotguns also have a problem that the spread is completely random. So maybe not completely. It probably has like pattern sets that it goes at, but like a lot of the time, if you don't reduce the dispersion of the round, you can get bad spreads, and a bad spread shot won't do enough damage, and you'll end up either needing an extra shot or they'll kill you before you can get it off. So it's a little bit of RNG as well with shotguns in this game, but they are super strong in close range, and I would say avoid at all costs unless you have a deluge, and then just hope he misses, because if he misses, you've got him. if he hits, shotguns also, like if you hit people in the head, you can one-tap them. So you got to watch out getting shot in the face by a shotgun, because it'll one-tap you a lot of the time if he gets a good spread. So the 1911, I kind of went over this a little bit. It is a challenge gun, basically, and that's it. I would consider it slightly better than the Stomp if you have a fast trigger finger, because it doesn't seem to spread as much and it reaches out a little further. But otherwise, it's pretty much a do not use. This is the gun of choice. I mean, it's a full auto pistol with all 3 damage slots. Enough said. This thing's a beast. If you want cheapo pistol to wreck people with, like, this thing will low-key slaughter people. It's probably not as good as a Deluge, but pretty close in close range. Then you have this, the revolver, which also is kind of a challenge gun, but a lot of people will put gold ammo in it and a decent scope on it. And if you build it up really nice, if you put a halfway decent scope on it It will one-tap T4s in the chest and the arms. But you have to have a modded one, and you have to put a really kind of an expensive scope on it to do it. But otherwise, it two-taps pretty much everybody with gold ammo and just like sniper mod on it if they're at a range. So if you're not running a sniper rifle, you don't want to, you want to save those slots, you might just pick up a saber, throw a ×4 on it with sniper mod, put gold ammo in it. It's only 6 rounds. It's not that expensive. And then you have a long range option if you're running like a shotgun. Because at mid ranges, maybe not super far ranges, but at mid ranges, this thing will tap people. You get like a 2-tap. So, but that's it for the guns. That's the whole overview of all of them. And then you have like your melee weapons, but melee is not advisable in this game at all. It's basically useless. It doesn't even matter if you level them up. If you're thinking about leveling up your melee weapon, I wouldn't bother. It's super expensive for what it does. 51 damage at best. I've got mine to like level 4, and it's like what, 54 or 51 going to 54 at level 3. So it's still a 2-tap. It's a 2 or 3-tap basically regardless. And I don't know if you can actually get it up high enough, because like these are so expensive that I can't even afford it. And I've been playing this game for over a year now. So if you're new, I just don't bother. Equip your pickaxe if you want to mine the Devil's Ore in the desert map for a little extra money. You could do that. I've done melee runs that are kind of fun. If you put on silence boots, you can sneak up and melee people, but it's literally just for fun. Don't expect to make any real money doing it, because you're going to get killed like 9 times out of 10 probably. So, especially with all the cheaters now, like melee doesn't stand a chance. I don't even know if I would try melee at this point in time. But that's going to be it for this video, guys. That's all the guns, the overview of them. I'll go over attachments in the next video, and then I'll show you how to mod each individual gun, but that may take a series of videos after that. But that's going to be it for this one, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.